Welcome to episode 14 of the Monday Night Review. I hope you're well and surviving the summer holidays. It always comes as a shock to me when the Scottish and US schools start going back now, and we've got another 3 weeks left to go. We're back home and I'm podcasting instead of doing the mounds of washing and sorting that I'm supposed to do. Today we're going to be talking about doppelgangers, a term you may have heard of, but which has a few variances in meaning. It literally means double walker in German, and for some it means a non-biological relative who looks exactly like you. I've seen my doppelganger and it was incredibly strange. I was at my room in university and a friend ran in and said, "You have to come to the bar, there's someone who looks exactly like you there." So off I went. A guy who I really didn't like, who'd messed around a friend of mine, was having a drink with his friends and his new girlfriend, and it was like looking in a mirror. It was really weird. So weird, in fact, that I took my pint back to my room. It just felt really odd to be sitting at a table with someone who I could even recognise looked like me, but I digress. In mythology, a doppelganger is a ghostly or paranormal phenomenon, usually seen as a harbinger of bad luck, with some traditions seeing it as an evil twin. In modern language, it's used casually to refer to someone who looks similar, but really it refers to an apparition or double walker of a living person, a precise reflection or spectral duplicate of that person. Something similar appears in most cultures, lending validity to the phenomenon, the fact that it's been happening all over the world for hundreds of years. Ka in ancient Egyptian mythology being a tangible spirit double, and in Breton, Cornish and Norman folklore, the Ankau is the personification of death and a version of the doppelganger. A more modern term for doppelganger found a lot on social media is twin stranger, and even apps and sites where people can upload pictures of themselves and facial recognition software can find users of similar appearance exist. There are, of course, psychic and psychiatric explanations for the occurrence of doppelgangers, not the kind, which is the stranger that happens to look a lot like you. Before we go any further, though, I'd like to apologise for the words, both English and otherwise, that I'm about to butcher. I know it will drive some of you nuts, but I am doing my best, and there are some real corkers in here. Starting off with hotoscopy is a term in psychiatry and neurology for the hallucination of seeing one's own body at a distance. It can occur as a symptom of schizophrenia and epilepsy and is considered a possible explanation for doppelganger phenomena. Interestingly, I was reading an article yesterday about a woman who heard voices in her head and went to the doctor about it and was prescribed medication and told that she had a psychiatric disorder. She took the medication and their voices stopped, but when on holiday, the voices started again and told her she needed to go and seek medical attention and gave her the address of the place she needed to go to, which she did, and it turned out the address that the voices had given her were the place of a CT scan. After the scan, it was discovered that she had an operable brain tumour, which they removed, and once they removed it, she couldn't hear the voices anymore. So whether the voices were a symptom of the brain tumour or something else, it's a pretty incredible story. Criminologists find evidence of facial familiarity and similarity have caused instances of wrongful convictions based on eyewitness testimony. In one case, a person spent 17 years behind bars persistently denying any involvement with the crime of which he was accused. He was finally released after someone was found who shared a striking resemblance and the same first name who had in fact committed the crime. In the psychic world, the idea of bilocation, whereby one projects an image of their physical body to a different location at the same time, is also as old as the doppelganger itself. Some believe in an astral body that is separate from the physical body and capable of travelling outside it throughout the universe as an out-of-body experience. Some think doppelgangers could also be a result of an aura or human energy field, which is, according to parapsychological explanations, a coloured emanation said to enclose a human body or any animal or object. Some people have a theory that someone's doppelganger comes out to do the tasks that the person himself was doing in an alternate universe. It's suggesting that doppelgangers are simply people who exist in parallel universes. There have been a few examples in history of people seeing their doppelgangers or those of others. Queen Elizabeth I was said to have witnessed her own doppelganger lying motionless beside her while she was on her bed. Her lethargic doppelganger was described as pallid, shivered, and wan, which shocked the Virgin Queen. Queen Elizabeth I was known to be calm, sensible, strong of will, who didn't have much faith in spirits and superstition, but she still knew that folklore considered such an occurrence a bad sign. She died shortly afterwards in 1603. English poet John Donne is said to have seen his wife's doppelganger in Paris the night of the birth of their stillborn child. He saw her pass twice through the room in which she was carrying the body of a dead child in her arms. The year was 1612, so there's no way he could have known that his child was being stillborn at the time of his vision. The Empress of Russia, Catherine the Great, was awakened one night by her servants, who were surprised to see her in bed. They told the Tsarina that they'd just seen her in the throne room. In disbelief, Catherine proceeded to the throne room to see what they were talking about, and she saw herself sitting on the throne. She ordered her guards to shoot the doppelganger. Of course, it must have been unscathed, but Catherine died of a stroke a few weeks after that. Percy Shelley, husband of Mary Shelley, author of Frankenstein, reportedly saw his doppelganger many times during his life, once walking towards him on a terrace, and again on the beach, pointing out to sea. He drowned in a sailing accident in 1822, not long after. And it was after his death that Mary said their friend Jane Williams had also encountered Shelley's doppelganger, seeing him walk past a window twice in the same direction without having turned around when she knew Shelley to be elsewhere. In 1893, George Tryon was seen walking through the drawing room of his family home in Eaton Square whilst his wife was having a drinks party. He was seen by several guests descending the stairs in full uniform, looking straight ahead and without speaking to anyone, and passing through 2 rooms. At the time, he was on his ship HMS Victoria off the coast of Syria, and it is later recorded that he went down with the ship the same night, after the Victoria collided with the HMS Camperdown after an unexplained and bizarre order to turn the ship in the direction of the other vessel, for which Tryon blamed himself. His last words were, "It's all my fault." The French novelist Guy de Maupassant was inspired to write a short story called Louis, which literally means he, in French, after a disturbing doppelganger experience in 1889. Whilst writing, de Maupassant claimed that his body double entered his study, sat beside him, and even began dictating the story he was in the process of writing. In the story Louis, the narrative is told by a young man who is convinced that he's going insane after having glimpsed what appears to be his spectral double. Guy de Maupassant claimed to have had numerous encounters with his doppelganger. The strangest part of de Maupassant's life was that his story, Louis, proved somewhat prophetic. At the end of his life, de Maupassant was committed to a mental institution following a suicide attempt in 1892. The following year he died. On the other hand, it's been suggested that de Maupassant's vision of a body double may have been linked to mental illness caused by syphilis, which he had contracted as a young man. British MP Khan Rash was due to attend a parliamentary debate in 1906 when he came down with the flu and was bedridden for some time. No one expected to see him that evening, so when fellow parliamentarian Sir Gilbert Parker spotted him in Parliament during a debate, he was at once well pleased and surprised. He sat next to Khan Rash, greeting him and said, "I hope you feel better." Seeing no reaction in his friend's face, Gilbert concentrated on the debate. When he next turned to look at Khan Rash, he found the seat empty. Gilbert searched for his friend in the lobby of Parliament, but to no avail. However, other parliamentarians have also seen Khan Rash during the course of the evening. Khan Rash fully recovered, found out about the incident and wrote a lengthy newspaper article jokingly explaining that his will to participate in the debate was so strong that his spirit was forced to attend on his behalf. Luckily for Conrad, she lived on for a few more years, so it was not a harbinger of his death. However, one of the most intriguing stories of the doppelganger phenomenon is that of Emilie Sagee. Sagee was a brilliant teacher, loved by her students and dedicated to her work. She was thought of as one of the most promising in her field, but over 16 years of working, she held 19 different positions in countless schools across France. The story of Emilie Sagee was first told by Robert Dale Owen in his 1860 book, Footfalls on the Boundary of Another World. In this book, Dale Owen writes that he heard about Emilie's story from Julie von Guldenstube, daughter of Baron von Guldenstube, who attended Pensionnat von Neuwick. This is the only evidence or source of Emilie Sagee, and all the stories about her come from this. However, it's a fascinating story, so we are going to go into it in more detail. It is very obvious, though, once you start researching this, how it's literally, in some instances, just copy and pasted from the same thing. There is no other source of this at all. In 1846, Dijon-born 32-year-old Sagee started her 19th teaching position at an elite boarding school, and soon many teachers and students began complaining of seeing Sagee's twin in the halls and classrooms. The twin would often sit beside her in the classroom and imitate her actions, while Emilie seemingly had no idea of her existence. People would often see her in different places at similar times, and initially put this down to strange timings. So one person would say they'd passed her just in the corridor outside, when someone else had said they'd came from the opposite side of the building and left her reading there. Though Emilie never saw her doppelganger, many witnesses say she would often seem lethargic and groggy when the twin appeared. The first time it was spotted at this latest school, she was giving lessons to a class of 13 girls. She'd been writing on the board, her back facing the students, when out of nowhere a projection-like entity that looked just like her appeared. It stood right behind her, seemingly mocking her by imitating her movements. All students saw this happen and gave the same account. Since the first sighting, Emilie's doppelganger was spotted quite frequently by others at the school. It was seen sitting beside the real Emilie, eating silently while Emilie ate, but with no cutlery or food. It was seen imitating while she did her everyday work and sitting in class while Emilie taught. One time, as Emilie was helping one of her little students dress up for an event, the doppelganger appeared. The student looked in the mirror and saw two Emilies fixing her dress, and looked down to confirm the sighting, and fainted. When Sagee was ill in bed and being attended to by another teacher, she suddenly became stiff, and when asked if she was feeling worse, spoke languidly, saying that she was okay. The friend then looked around the room and saw the apparition of Sagee pacing the other side of the room. As the doppelganger disappeared, Emilie returned to a less rigid, more awake state. On the most famous occasion, Emilie was teaching a class of 42 girls, and whilst they were at work, decided to step into the garden to pick flowers. Moments after she left the room, Emilie's twin appeared in the teacher's chair, whilst Emilie herself was still clearly visible in the garden. Two of the students approached the twin and reached out to touch it. They say it looked exactly like her, but they could put their hands through it and it felt almost empty, like cobwebs or muslin material. Again, all 42 students recalled exactly the same events. When asked about this occurrence, Emilie recalled having an urge to return to the classroom to supervise the children, but remained outside picking the flowers. She became aware of the spirit being present when people with her would change their behaviour, though she could never see it herself or feel the apparent loss of energy. Word got back to the parents, who threatened to remove their daughters from the school, and many did. And in the end, only 12 of the 42 remained, so Emilie was eventually let go from her post. She went from there to live with her sister-in-law and her two small children, and when von Guldenstube visited her, the children were clearly aware of what happened, as they would refer to Aunt Emilies. From there she went to Russia, and after that we hear nothing more about Emilie, and Dale Owen's book remains the only account of her doppelganger. They've tried to trace her to see if such a person existed, and it was found that an Octavia Sagee was born in Dijon at the same time as Emilie Sagee was supposed to be born. This Octavia Sagee was born out of wedlock, so whether she changed her name to Emilie to cover up her birth story, but also the surname in the book is spelt Sagee, but some believe that this is a misspelling of Saget, which would be pronounced the same. And I don't know if anyone has looked into whether Emilie Sagee spelt Et and traced it that way. It's such an interesting, fascinating story, though, and it's had lots of people trying to trace if it's in fact true. We've heard from a man who everyone believed had a photograph, but in fact turned out he wanted to see a photograph. So for a while everyone thought he'd taken a photograph of her and her evil twin. They call it an evil twin and say that it was mocking her, but really it may be just that it was going through the motions. And because it was going through the motions, it looks mocking. So that's the case of Emilie Sagee and a bit about doppelgangers. I find that sort of thing so fascinating. There's loads of books to read about it. So if I read any good ones, I will let you know. I've just received, I'm obsessively buying secondhand books, and I've just received The Cases That Haunt Us by John Douglas, the legendary Mindhunter, and it covers loads of classic, weird American stories like Zodiac, JonBenet Ramsey, Lizzie Borden. So I cannot wait to read that. That's my reading for this week. And hopefully I'll see you next week. Please send us an email to themondaynightrevue, REVUE, to tell me your favourite true crime, paranormal, weird story. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook, where we are The Monday Night Review. And until next time, stay safe, be kind, and always check the back seat before you drive.